Live study of Genesis message 50. Living in fellowship with God, communing with God on a human level. In this message, we come to Genesis 18, which contains an intimate record of Abraham's experience with God. If we take an overall view of Abraham's experience with God, as found in chapter 11 through chapter 24, we shall see that his experience is in four major sections. Firstly, while he was living in the demonic land of Chaldee, he was called by God. Suddenly, much to his surprise, the God of glory appeared to him. That was the beginning of his experience with God. Secondly, in chapters 12 through 14, Abraham experienced living by faith in God for his assistance. He had been called by God for the fulfillment of God's divine purpose. But as a human being, he still had to have food, protection, and all that was necessary to maintain his existence. He was a stranger in a new land, having no property of his own. Thus, God trained him to exercise the very faith which God had infused into him, to trust in God for his assistance. Following that, in chapters 15 through 17, the third section, God trained him to know grace for the fulfillment of his purpose. Here, Abraham learned not to do anything by himself or on his own, but to do everything by and with God. Although God needed him, God did not need anything of him. All that Abraham had, was, and could do was absolutely repudiated by God. God spent at least 15 years to train Abraham in this matter. For 13 years, God disappeared from him because he did not behave himself properly. Abraham was trained, disciplined, and very much in God's favor, but he did not walk in the presence of God. Rather, he walked in the presence of his wife, the one who proposed that his exercise his flesh to produce a seed for the fulfillment of God's purpose. Abraham expected that Ishmael, his seed, could fulfill God's purpose. Nevertheless, God seemed to say, "No, I don't approve of Ishmael. He is the issue of your effort, the produce of your doing. I reject him, and you must not keep him. Abram, you must learn that nothing that you can do means anything to me. I only need you, not your ability and strength. I don't need your Lord, Eliezer, Hagar, or anything of you. You must walk before me, not doing anything by yourself or on your own. You must be nourished and supplied by the sufficiency of my divine order. Then you will be able to produce something not only for me, but also of me. I only accept and approve what is out of myself. I shall not produce an Isaac without you. I shall produce an Isaac through you, but not out of you. You are my channel, not the source. Whenever you consider yourself to be the source, you insult me. I am the unique, all-sufficient source. You have known me as the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth. Now you must know me as El Shaddai, as the all-sufficient mighty one with an order. Stay under my order and be supplied and nourished constantly by my all-sufficiency. This is the way to walk before me. As Abraham learned to know grace for the fulfillment of God's purpose, God changed him in both name and in nature. God changed Abraham's constitution by having him circumcised. Abraham was terminated and Abraham came into being. This is the third major section of Abraham's experience of God. Living in fellowship with God, communion with God on the human level. Immediately after this, he was ushered into a glorious section, living in fellowship with God. Abraham had been called, had learned to live by faith in God for his assistance, and had come to know grace for the fulfillment of God's purpose. Now he has been brought into constant fellowship with God. The fourth section of his experience is found in chapters 18 through 24. Everything revealed in these 7 chapters is an aspect of Abraham's intimate fellowship with God. In the first section of his experience, God appeared to Abraham as the God of glory. In the second section, he revealed himself as the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth. In the third section, he came to Abraham as El Shaddai, as the all-sufficient mighty one with an other. In the fourth section, God came in a very different way as a mortal man. As Abraham sat in the door of his tent during the heat of the day, he saw 3 mortal men approaching. In Hebrew, the word translated man in verse 2 means mortal men, human beings. God appeared to Abraham in such a form. At first, Abraham did not realize that one of these men was the Lord Jehovah and that the other 2 were angels. Of these forms of God's appearing as the God of glory, as the Most High God, as El Shaddai, and as a mortal man, which do you prefer? Do you prefer that God appear to you as the God of glory? If he did, you would be terrified. Would you like him to come as the Most High God? If the President of the United States were to come to me and say, I am the Most High President of the United States, coming to visit the little man, I would feel uneasy. But if he were to come as a man the same as me, I would say, Sir, how are you? Please come in and rest and be refreshed. If he were to come in this way, revealing later that he was the President of the United States, I could have a very good time with him. Of these 4 ways of God's appearing, I prefer that he come to me in the form of a mortal man, not in his divine glory, in his most high position, nor in his all-sufficiency. We all need to experience our God to such an extent. At the beginning of our experience, we sense Him as the God of glory. But the more we experience Him, the more we realize that He comes in a human form, the same as we are. If God had not come to Abraham in such a human form, how could Abraham have been called his friend? Genesis 18 reveals that Abraham and God spoke with one another like friends. Abraham said to him, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away. I pray thee, from thy servant, let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Abraham prepared water for God to wash his feet, and God rested under a tree in front of Abraham's tent.